Hello, everyone. Today we have with us Seth Price, managing partner at Price Benowitz LLP, a successful personal injury law firm, and founder at BluShark Digital, a digital marketing agency focused on helping lawyers stand out. Seth is also a Forbes Agency Council member, a podcaster, and a reputable name in the law marketing niche. Seth, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the very nice introduction.
Well, I mean, we're lucky to have you, and hopefully in the next 20, 25 minutes, we'll, get some knowledge bombs out of you.
I'll do my best.
Seth, congratulations also for the inclusion in the 2024 INC 5000 list. I mean, you have been growing, ever since. Like, congratulations for another milestone.
Thank you.
Uh, it looks like entrepreneurship was always in you. Before we dive deep into law marketing, tell us how Seth was as a kid growing up.
I had a lemonade stand, and it's funny because one of the most powerful lawyers in the country always talks about, you could tell who the other kick-ass entrepreneurs were based if they had a newspaper route. That was like the first thing in the US that you could do to make a buck, or make more than a buck. Like you could actually get tips and, you create your own little business. And growing up in New York City, that was not possible. There's a professional group that owned a contract for our area, and they would deliver to the buildings. There was no paper route. Because of that, I didn't have it. So I was like, maybe I missed something. But then I reflected back that when I got to high school, I wanted to get into politics, and I volunteered on a campaign. And that campaign had to deliver newspaper. One newspaper of the free newspapers in our area was going after the candidate and lambasting him and supporting his opponent. And another newspaper was supporting him. So we had to get a copy of a newspaper when it was thicker with ads to each door at 100 different apartment buildings, each being approximately 14 stories high. And I remember they said, we need this done. Here's $3,000. We don't care how you get it done. So I went out and I got the neighbor kids who were probably, if I was, 14 at the time, the kids were presumably younger than me, anywhere from, 11, 12, maybe a 13-year-old thrown in, and said, here's $3 an hour plus pizza in between. They'd go to a building, they'd do it, they'd come back for more newspapers, have a couple slices of pizza, do a building, and we were able to cover the whole 100 buildings. And I probably spent $1,000 on pizza and salaries and got to keep the balance. And I thought that's pretty cool. Like, if you can make more money than you're spending, then you get to keep the balance.
Yeah, you've always been a hustler and a smart businessman.
It was, and everyone was happy. The kids was more money than they'd ever made. They walked away with $20 at the time, seemed like a big deal, and food. And the campaign got it done. And then, and I think that that's one of the biggest things that can be there. If you solve somebody's problem, you'll make money. If somebody really wants to do a podcast and they can't get off the phone themselves and you're able to solve that for them, great. If you have to say you really should do a podcast, this is why, that's a much harder place to be. I've been there many times in my life. Like when I started, Hell was a founding employee of uslaw.com. And we had to convince lawyers to advertise online. Like, I got the yellow pages. Why would I ever want to do this? And they would yell at us, hang up the phone, and this and that. And so making a market is very, very difficult. But figuring out where there's already a need and solving for it, that is where, I think that people see much greater success. Now, there's opportunities making a market, but it's not for the faint of heart, and it doesn't always work.
Right. Well, I mean, no, you grew your own law marketing firm, from 2 to 40 people. And then, you started BluShark, which basically was the in-house team of your own law firm. So tell us about like the main, pillars that were the main reason for, growth of your law firm. Like, was it like
It was digital.
all
There's no
digital?
way to put it. We worked on digital. From day one, a buddy of mine, Dave Benowitz, I went to college and law school with him. We took the same year off between college and law school. We were fraternity brothers back in the day. I've been stuck with this guy since 1987. You weren't even born in 87, were you?
I was born exactly in 87.
87. I was graduating high school and starting with university. And We divided and conquered. He was the chief legal officer. I did the marketing and management, and we built it through digital. Like at the time, there were plenty of firms that were expert lawyers, solos, and there were bigger firms that were doing some crappy legal work, but nobody had tried to meld great lawyering with great marketing, and that was sort of my passion. We were very successful at it, and about 8 or 9 years ago, we had this real rock star who I had mentored from intern through admin, through marketing assistant to marketing manager to marketing director. I said, hey, I want opportunity for this guy. He wants opportunity. We could replicate what we did for Price Benowitz for others. And that was the impetus for BluShark.
Right. I mean, in the US, you find more lawyers on billboards than you find models and actors. So,
Absolutely.
like the lawyers love the billboards and the traditional form of marketing. How easy or difficult is it still to convince lawyers, to take the digital route?
Easier and easier. There, people used to be when I started, phone books were dying, so that was not the issue, right? You didn't have to convince people to get out of phone books. That during my generation was happening, but the TV players ignored digital completely, and they were like, we can make our money there, and they did for many, many years. It has gotten much, much harder with just TV. Many people in the States have cut the cord. The OTT has not had the same ROI that the traditional TV has. And the number of people who are watching broadcast TV is shrinking dramatically, dramatically, to the point where it still works. I'm not saying that people shouldn't do it, but that I don't know a single major TV advertiser that doesn't also have a major digital presence, which also means that you can't, before you might be saying, hey, that's the TV player, I'll be digital. Those TV guys are throwing FU money at digital and making it very, very competitive, even for the little guy.
Right. Talking about digital, like SEO, for lawyers, especially like, niches like personal injury, like is very important. Like, what does your SEO process look like? Just like the main highlights, which are basically, relevant to the niche.
So, I mean, look, digital marketing has certain principles, and SEO specifically, right? So the pillars of SEO we've always looked at as content and links being the 1-2 punch. People who are not building authoritative content and not putting authoritative backlinks, that is not SEO. Now, you can build a website and you can just in a non-competitive space, and it may eventually get eyeballs, but if it's competitive, those two things are needed. The third leg of this is that you need to have a well-coded site. Your schema needs to be in place. You have to show Google what's what. What has transpired over the last 3 to 5 years is that local has taken on an amazingly important role. So before it was just your website, but now it's your website and your Google Business Profile. It used to be with Google My Business, and that now combined with reviews. So it used to be that an agency could do everything that a law firm needed, and that with the advent of local, you still need the law firm to do good work and produce reviews in
Yeah.
a meaningful number and meaningful quality. And without that, you really can't tell the story needed to move the needle the way you could. So that agencies now need to work, as we've always have, but collaboratively with law firms. And I'm always amazed. There are law firms that get it, and there are law firms that ignore it. And those that ignore it do not do nearly as well as the ones that really buy in at the executive level. This isn't like, hey, I told somebody to get me reviews. This is just like you're looking at your bottom line, you're looking at your review count, the growth, the cadence, and all of that.
Right. Any specific tools that you like for reviews, review management in
I mean,
particular?
the answer is yes. Any of them are fine. There's not like one silver bullet. And the tools only get you so far. If you want somebody, like you could send out emails to put people on a podcast. That's great. If you have their textable number, that's going to make a big, big difference in your conversion, right?
Right.
Emails you get day in and day out, text messages, great. Better yet, picking up the phone and saying hello. If you're able to speak to a happy client, and the problem is this is the analogy I use a lot, which is if you're a Jiffy Lube's a US based oil change place. You come in, you drive your car in, no reservations, you're out in 20 minutes, maybe with an upsell or two of an oil filter or again, an air filter or maybe a windshield wiper. But they probably have an average ticket price of $80 and you're on your way. They have 500 clients a day. If they get 1% from an email drip campaign, that's pretty good, right? If I take that. If I had 5 reviews a day, 365 days a year, that's a pretty good number of reviews. So
Right.
I'd be pretty happy. Now, the problem with a law firm is if you have, 100 closings a month and you get 1%, that's not very good. So you really need to up that percentage. And it can't just be here's an email, but it's got to be your staff tied in, setting the tone that we are built on reviews, we count on it, and that we're going to be doing this. You get their permission to send it, you send it, you follow up. I mean, it's not that it's going to be 100%, but it can't be 1%.
I think this question, is so important, in the times we are in. How do you keep your law firm, always like 5 years ahead?
It's very, very tough. I think you go to conferences, you read, you listen, you do podcasts like this to see what people are talking about. You pick up tidbits, but law firms are generally not ahead. I always say, software wise, I'm not a huge proponent of getting the cutting edge software. I'd rather get the kinks out and then come in 2 years in and make sure that it's working the way it's supposed to be working. I'll give you a great example. AI chat. Been out there for a while, waited a couple of years, couldn't be happier. I really see it as compared to what most chat companies were doing, working in the Philippines, not great response times, hit or miss quality. Like I would rather make sure that nobody's saying anything stupid. They can always click something to leave that AI chat, but the AI chat does a lot of good things with pre-scripted information. And to me, I know it's not pure AI. It's not like we're doing, chat GPT responses, but that with pre-programmed responses, we can get a lot accomplished.
Yeah, yeah. What form of content works best, for lawyers?
A great question. And I think it depends. And the answer again is yes. I'm a big believer in evergreen content that dives deep on a particular subject matter area and a blog that is engaging. One of my partner, I do the podcast with the law firm Blueprint. He put something out about mental health and lawyers on LinkedIn, and it got 20,000 views in like 2 days. Right, for a layperson, that's a huge deal. Not it's not some dancing girl who's getting 1 million views, but on a thoughtful post. So what I would say is, those combinations of things that drive traffic that might be more sexy, as well as the fundamental things that answer questions that demonstrate to Google that you are the substantive expert in an area.
Right, right. Tell us your favorite client story.
Favorite client story. There are so many. I'll tell you one, which is like sort of, it doesn't always take a ton of money if you're in a niche market. And we had a client who came to us who was in a career change and didn't have a large budget, was in a very small geography for a less competitive area of law. And we were able to build it up, eventually give him a satellite office or two, and with a very, very reasonable budget, we're able to crush this and allow this guy to switch careers. We've seen that. I just got word that a client that we've been working with has had, the fastest growth to 8 figures I've ever seen in a law firm. In like 5 years or so, he got there and is working some crazy, crazy profit margin exceeding 50%. I mean, it's not sustainable, but it's pretty freaking awesome when we're the main driver of all that business.
Right. And it's such an amazing feeling as well. Seth, strategic hires, are very crucial for any business, including law firms. And you have spoken about, hiring and how important it is. Any best practices or strategies you follow?
Well, I would say that the key is to make sure that you hire people that are matching of your core value and that have the substantive expertise. That sounds obvious, yes. And one of the frustrations is when you start a firm or a business, you don't have that same gravitas to get everybody applying to you. And so I know that early on, the people looking at us were very different. I now have parents, friends of mine in the neighborhood calling because their college age kids really want to get into BluShark. And so people are vying to get there. It's a prestigious thing to get. And so that we're getting a higher level of, I mean, early days, we had guys passing Adderall bottles around the office. We had to fire somebody over that. We had one guy came in, no joke, with his laptop and started day trading during the day. Even after we said you can't do that, he's like, well, I don't make enough without it. And I'm just like, so we haven't seen that in 5 years. We get a much, much better ilk. We're getting people, we're smarter about how we're doing. Not that we don't make mistakes. Gary Vee talks about it. And, I remember this actually a number of years back, but we hired a guy. I had one of my best favorite interviews. I was in Miami. The guy flew to Miami to meet me. We had like this epic dinner on the water, one of the most nicest meals you could have. And I was like, this guy's amazing. He made it a week. It was an epic failure. He had come from one of the lead gen companies and been there 15 years. And I was like, this guy can open a division for us. And it was like he only had 2 people in his Rolodex after 15 years. Again, mind blown. But again, there's a funny Gary Vee video that I love where he's talking about like we all suck at it. We keep trying to get better, but when you make a mistake, and I did in that case, you give the guy a hug and say, look, it's just not right. You know it, I know it. I think he went groveling back to his prior job, but like this guy should never have left where he was.
Right, right. What excites you the most about the future of legal marketing?
You know what? What I love is that you never know what's coming next, and it's that challenge and figuring that out. Obviously, AI is going to play a big role. How that fits in and making sure that we're ahead of the curve to where AI is being pulled from. I think that is the part, the challenge. You were saying, how do you make sure you stay ahead of the curve? I think I'll give you an example of where we were successful. We had seen Google's push towards proximity, location-based search. And we were already on clients to say, hey, if you want to survive, you need to open second and third offices. And those that did well on that proximity update, and those that didn't got crushed. I'm always, it's always a thing where we are wanting to make sure we're ahead of the curve. We're generally there, but when you miss, you scramble and you make sure that you protect the clients and you get them where they need to be.
Thank you so much for your time. It was fun, and hopefully, we'll have you back for another episode.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.